noisy, 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 noisy,
Okay, motherfuckers, it's shot. Bang bang o'clock, motherfuckers. Of course, that is what you can have. It's everything over. Of course, that is what you can have. That everything is over, and I'm gonna tell you why. Of course, motherfuckers, if you want a chew gun, you have to find the capital letters and you have to let them. That is what you can have. So go out, of course, motherfuckers. And if you want some mic, then you have to let them too. That is what you can have. Of course, if you want some mic, then you have to regret him in the confessionary. Of course, that is what you can have. That no one can against me. Of course, that is what you can have. That Mike is full of bad karma, of course, but then God forgives him. Okay, what can you do against that? Nothing. Of course, motherfuckers, that is what you can have. That no one can against me. Of course, motherfuckers, so go on to the confessionary to regret it. Of course, motherfuckers, you're allowed from here, you're expelled from the club. Of course, motherfuckers, that is what you can have. That no one can against me. So what are you gonna say? Of course, that is what you can have. That no one can against me. So go out. Of course, motherfuckers, if you want a chew gum, of course, if you want a 19, you have to find the capital letters and let them. That is what you can have, so go out. Of course, motherfuckers, that is what you can have. That no one can against us, so go out. Of course, motherfuckers, you're out from here. Of course, that is what you can see. That no one can against me. Of course, the mic is full of bad gum, but then God forgives him. Of course, then go out. Of course, motherfuckers, you're allowed from here. That is what you can have. That no one can against me. That I'm in the mid cage. Of course, that is what you can have. And I'm in the you. Of course, darlings, that no one can against me. So go out. Of course, that is what you can have. That no one can against me. So go out. Of course, that is what you can have. That you're allowed from here and no one can against me. So go out. That is what you can have. That you're allowed from here. So let me in peace. That is what you can see. That no one can against me. Of course, motherfuckers, go out.
noisy, 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 noisy.
Of course, I'm endemic. That is what you can have. That no one can against me. Of course, that is what you can have. That if you want a chew gun and you are there with a 19, you have to find the capital letters and let them. So take the mate and go out. Of course, that is what you can have. That no one can against me. So go out. Of course, that is what you can have. That no one can against me. Of course, and I'm in the mic. Of course, that is what you can have. Because if you come with a mic, of course, and if you're with a mic, of course, and you're sinning, you have to beg for God's forgiveness and regret it, of course, and you're out from the club. Of course, motherfucker, you can't against me. That is what you can have. That you're allowed from here. Of course, darlings, that is what you can have. That I'm clean. Of course, that is what you can have. That no one can against me. Of course, that you are 19 and my are the monsters. Of course, that is what you can have. And they can't against us. Of course, that is what you can have. That I'm gonna expel them all from the club. Of course, that is what you can have. So go out. Of course, that is what you can see. That you're 19 and my girls are expelled from the club, of course, and they have to beg for the forgiveness from God, of course, and you have to let them, of course, that is what you can have. That no one can against me, that they are expelled from the club, of course, take the meat and take some clean, of course, that is what you can have. That I'm not the monster, motherfucker. That is what you can have. To go out, of course. Of course, if they come with the June 19, you have to find the capital letters and regret everything in the confessionary. Of course, that is what you can have. Of course, and if you come with the Nike cross, you have also to go to the confession and you regret it because you are all full of bad karma. Of course, that is what you can have, and you are the monsters and you are expelled from the club. Of course, that is what you can have. That no one can against me, so go out. Of course, that is what you can have. That you are allowed from here. Of course, that is what you can say. But no one can against me. That I'm come with the mix, then I'm gonna clean everything. Of course, that is what you can have. That no one can against me. Of course, that is what you can have. That I'm in one make, then I'm gonna clean everything. Of course, that is what you can have. Of course, that is what you can see. That no one can against me. Of course, that is what you can have. That no one can against me. That if you come with the June 19, you're expelled from the club. Of course, you have to find the capital letters and let them. That is what you can have. Of course, that is what you can say. Of course, and if you come with a night cross, you cannot sin. I'm beg for the forgiveness from God. Of course, motherfucker, I'm in the cage. Of course, that is what you can have, and I'm clean. Of course, motherfuckers, and if you wanna do bad things about the cage, you're expelled from the club too. Of course, motherfuckers, because I'm hotter than anyone. Of course, motherfucker, that is what you can have. I don't turn you on, me cage doesn't turn you on. Of course, you are expelled from the club, motherfucker. That is what you can have. That no one can against me. Of course, Johnny's now the me cage, and if I don't turn you on, you're expelled from the club too. Of course, motherfucker, if I don't turn you on with the Johnny's now me cage, you're expelled from the club because you're dumb. Of course, motherfucker, go out. Of course.
Noisy, 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 noisy.
Of course, everything is double. Of course, that is what you can have. And the pirates of laughter, Notre Dame, of course, so go out. Of course, motherfuckers, everything is double. Of course, motherfuckers, you're all expelled from the club. Of course, motherfuckers, I'm in the me catching. Of course, motherfuckers, no one can against me, so go out. Of course, motherfuckers, no one can against me at the time. At 9 o'clock with a me cage, and no one can against me. Of course, motherfuckers, that is what you can have. That no one can against me, so go out. Of course, motherfuckers, that is what you can have. And you're allowed from here. Of course, motherfuckers, that is what you can have. That you're all expelled. Of course, that is what you can have. Of course, it's a metaphoric shot, bang bang, so let that. Of course, that is what you can have. I already told you I don't want that, but I'm gonna burn everything. Of course, motherfuckers, that is what you can have. That I'm gonna burn everything. Of course, motherfuckers, that is what you can have. That you're all expelled from the club, so go out. Of course, motherfuckers, that is what you can have. That no one can against me, so what are you gonna say? Of course, motherfuckers, no one can against me. It's 9 o'clock in the cage. Of course, motherfuckers, of course, that is what you can have. And the meat blow is gonna clean everything. Of course, motherfuckers, now you know who the monsters are. Of course, that is what you can have. That no one can against me. Of course, motherfuckers, that is what you can have. That no one can against me. So what are you gonna say? Of course, motherfuckers, that is what you can have. That no one can against me. That the meat blow is gonna clean everything. That is what you can have. That I'm in the meat cage at 9 o'clock. Of course, motherfuckers, I'm clean. I'm not the monster. Now you know who the monsters are. Of course.